The first results of CNN's instant poll are in. Let's get right to CNN's bureau chief and political director, David Chalian. David, how did the voters that you snap polled feel about the speech?
Well, first, I just want to mention, Jake, this is a poll of speech watchers, not a poll that is representative of the country overall or what an electorate in an election looks like. And what we know is that people who tend to be fans or partisans with the president, no matter which party the president is in, tend to tune in more on speeches like this. And that's the case in tonight's survey as well, because we're 21% Democrat, 44% Republican in this sample, 35% independent. That's about 14 points more Republican than the overall general population. So keep that in mind when you see these results of speech watchers. To the results, what was your reaction to Trump's speech? 44% of speech watchers in our instant poll tonight say they had a very positive reaction to Trump's speech. 25% somewhat positive, 31% negative. How does that stack up against Donald Trump's previous addresses to joint sessions of Congress or State of the Union addresses? Look here, for all the years we have data for, 44% very positive reaction is actually his low water mark in all our instant polls after his previous addresses. You see in 2019, 18, and 17, he was higher in terms of very positive speech reaction. And what about to his modern day predecessors? How does this 44% very positive stack up? Again, it's the bottom of the barrel here. 51% in 2021 when Joe Biden gave his first joint address were very positive. Donald Trump himself was at 57% in 2017. And you see that Bush and Obama even higher than that. So this was not Donald Trump's best speech, but obviously still the plurality of speech watchers had a very positive reaction to it, Jake.
All right, David Chalian, thanks so much. John King.
Federal bureaucracy. My administration will reclaim power from this unaccountable bureaucracy. It bugged you in a particular way. How come?
Well, I think for myself, being a presidential management fellow, this is a 100%, merit-based program. People coming in are taking jobs that have lesser pay. They want to serve the American public. And for you to, blanket statements saying the entire bureaucracy is untamed and, doesn't have any tethering to anything. I mean, look at us. We're everyday average Americans that just want to serve the American public. And we're not allowed to do that.
And you said a large portion of your time was actually responding to congressional inquiries about whether or not the money was being spent appropriately in the case of the Housing and Urban Development Department.
Absolutely. We were responding to over 4,000 inquiries. And keep in mind, these are people, we're working with congressional staffers saying, hey, how can we support you? Hey, how can we offer assistance to make sure your grantees, the people on the ground, are getting the funding that they need?
And just to reiterate, so what you're saying is the Trump administration canceled the Presidential Management Fellows program. He talked about DEI, but this was a merit-based program.
When we're in the application process, we're not allowed to give any identifying information. It is 100% merit-based.
All right, Catherine, let's talk about the U.S. Forest Service. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the only time we heard anything about public lands was when President Trump renamed a national wildlife refuge in Texas to honor the victim of a killing by an undocumented immigrant. We didn't hear anything about federal lands otherwise, did we?
No, despite the fact that over 350 protests and rallies took place at national parks and national forest offices this past Saturday, and thousands of people attended to speak out for our public lands and for the people who serve them. I'm shocked that nothing came of that. And in addition, an executive order was signed that same day on Saturday that opened up our public lands to unsustainable timber harvesting.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that it didn't seem like wildlands, the land management agencies, were even on the radar of the president in this speech at all.
No, I would absolutely agree with that.
Nigella, let's talk about, you were at the U.S. Digital Service, the precursor to DOJ, but one of your main focuses was on making the immigration system, including the enforcement system, more efficient. And the president touted all these accomplishments that he said were accomplishments about immigration, about deportations, closing the border. The part that I watched you react to most strongly was when he said, the media and our friends in the Democrat Party keep saying we need new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border, but it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
Yeah.
What bugged you so much about that?
I think the demonization of immigrants in this speech today was as disappointing as it was frightening. And the thing that bothered me is it's a multifaceted approach that we need to attack the immigration problem, and it's been an issue over multiple presidents.
Which you yourself have been working on in terms of efficiency.
Definitely. Part of it are legislative fixes, but the other part are really process and tech improvements. And by getting rid of the subject matter experts that do this work for decades and the people who have the tech capabilities, and then more importantly, the trust that you build between agencies to actually align and prioritize this work is really difficult to see. You can gut something in 5 minutes, but to get the apparatus back up and running, that might take 5 years. So it was really disappointing to see some of those comments.
For a very brief moment, and Rachel referenced this earlier, you worked for DOJ because the U.S. Digital Service became DOJ. And when the president said that he has saved, I want to make sure I get this right, hundreds of billions of dollars, your reaction was you shook your head.
Yeah, I think as we've seen before, a lot of those savings that they have touted have been slowly removed as people see some of that discrepancy in the numbers. And I think it's really important for people to go back, keep checking the website, and hold DOJ accountable for the things that they are and aren't doing.
All right, and let's go to Alex Taylor, who's our geologist again in the group. We heard President Trump talk about something you worked directly on, which was critical earth minerals. He said that he was, quote, expanding critical minerals and rare earths, but he fired you. That's what you were working on.
Yeah, I supported active research projects on identifying sources of critical minerals in the U.S. domestically. It bothers me that he's more interested in engaging in neocolonialism to get minerals from other countries rather than supporting the scientists and the researchers who are aiding the minerals industry here in America.
You're talking about Greenland.
Mm-hmm, and Ukraine.
You also were particularly seemed annoyed by the statement that he made about thousands of federal workers not showing up to the office because the work that you do and your colleagues do with the U.S. Geological Survey is not done in the office. It's largely done in the field.
For many people, yes. The USGS is the most prestigious earth science research institution in the world. And we've been at the office this whole time. We do work in laboratories at the office, but lots of people are in the field every day. We monitor the nation's waterways. We monitor earthquakes, volcanoes, and other hazards. We study ecosystems. So our office is our nation's lands.
It really is a profound honor to have spent this time with you guys. And again, I just want to say, for me personally, on behalf of, I'm sure so many people that are watching, really sorry about the situation that you guys are in, and really wishing you guys all the best. Thank you guys very much.
The president, in his, what we believe was ad-libbing, we did not have prepared remarks from the president, which is unusual. White Houses usually distribute prepared remarks, so we don't know what was digression from those remarks and what was ad-lib. But the president did repeatedly seem to be ad-libbing when he was remarking on the expected impact of the economic decisions he's already made 6 weeks in, saying that the American people would have to bear with him, that there would be a little disturbance, that there would be an adjustment period. And again, he said a little disturbance, essentially suggesting that the roiling that we saw in the markets is something that he knows he caused, but he hopes people will not mind. For the record, the worst inflation in this country was in 1980. For the record, the economy that he was left by President Biden was not a catastrophe. It was literally the best economy in the world and was described by The Economist magazine as the envy of the world. That was the economy that was left to Donald Trump by Joe Biden. For the record, Social Security is not paying benefits in large numbers to 300-year-old people or 250-year-old people or 200-year-old people or 150-year-old people. In fact, the idea of Social Security as a bastion of massive fraud and overpayment is completely false. For the record, U.S. auto company CEOs are not psyched and delighted and so excited about President Trump's economic policies, including his tariffs. Take, for example, the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, who said that Trump's tariff policies would, quote, blow a hole in the U.S. auto industry that, quote, we've never seen. The president flat out lied about U.S. versus European spending to support what used to be our allies in Ukraine. The U.S. has committed about $125 billion to Ukraine's defense. Europe has committed about $259 billion. The president radically misstating the character and quantity of our relative support for what used to be our ally, now appears to be only Europe's ally and no longer ours. For the record, Joe Biden did not close over 100 power plants. There were more utility-sized power plants up and running in the United States when Joe Biden left office than when he achieved office. For the record, there is no EV mandate. For the record, oil and gas production in the United States hit all-time records under President Joe Biden. For the record, even Doge has never claimed that they have saved hundreds of billions of dollars in savings. The largest items they have claimed to achieve as savings in the U.S. budget have been debunked and they've been taken down, but even they don't falsely claim hundreds of billions of dollars worth of saving. For the record, and this is disgusting, the president made a spectacle out of praising a young man who's thus far survived pediatric cancer, as if the president had something to do with that. This was in the midst of him praising Doge. The Doge cuts, among other things, have cut off funding for ongoing research into pediatric cancer. For the record, I will note that Donald Trump did admit in his remarks today explicitly that Elon Musk is the head of Doge. And while that comes as no surprise to anybody who's been following the facts of this matter, that will end up in court because that is directly contrary to what the administration has overtly sworn to a federal judge about the leadership of Doge. I should also note, and this doesn't have to be for the record, I'll just note it for our own experience tonight, that at that point in the speech, when the president talked about how we will no longer be ruled by unelected bureaucrats, Democrats in the chamber pointed and laughed at Elon Musk.
You could see a lot of government workers are turning on Trump. And wild as it was, there were many people, even some of the people affected by layoffs, that still stood with Trump. But now you're seeing that less and less. The people, even some of the people who were fired, are quitting on Trump. Quitting on is related to, but not always directly to, physically quitting a job, right? You quit on somebody when you give up on them. Former Trump staff have quit on him when it's like they've left for other opportunities, but then they've given up on Trump because he's become a full-fledged maniac instead of just, I guess, mostly a maniac, and they were fine with him being a little crazy or a lot crazy, but not extremely crazy, whatever the reason. People were not happy with that speech last night. They just weren't. I want you to consider those numbers in context. You see, over 50% of the people who watch approved of it. But you have to remember a couple things. Compared to previous presidential speeches, it's quite poor. And the reason is, one, it was a terrible speech. And two, these speeches are almost always a bit partisan. You're more likely to watch it if your guy won. And so, traditionally, more Democrats watch when a Democrat's president, more Republicans watch when it's a Republican president. And so they're therefore more likely to say it was a good speech. And so the fact that Trump's audience was so divided is tailor-made to suggest that basically no Democrats liked it. And a big chunk of his own people, his own MAGA goons, the people that have staffed his movement, the people that staffed his coup on J6, have quit on him.